What's up, guys? I'm Chris Spags here, back with another Four Corners video for today's 9-game MLB main slate, courtesy of Awesemo.com. Now, it's an interesting slate we have today, one in which we actually have some decent pitching to look at, thank God, but also some weather concerns that are going to be really problematic to keep an eye on throughout the day. So right now, like this video and leave a comment down below. Let's do double dong picks today, because I feel like it is a decent home run slate. So like the video, comment your double dong pick, and if you are correct, I will give you a special shout out in tomorrow's Four Corners video. But for now, the first corner I want to hit on are the top pitchers on today's slate, and Blake Snell going against Toronto's a guy I like a lot today. Gets 2.9 implied runs against him, which is the lowest on the slate, and he's also expected to be the top-owned pitcher with 38% on DK, 22% on FanDuel, and 51% on Yahoo. Snell's 18.7% swing strike rate is 12.6 Ks per 9, and 2.6 xFIP are all extremely elite numbers, and a spot here versus a Toronto team who struggles versus lefties with a 25.2% K rate, 70 WRC+, and a 133 ISO seems like a best ideal match for Snell. There have been issues for elite pitchers a lot recently, but Snell's in a great spot, really one of the better spots for a top pitcher we've seen recently on a main slate. I like Snell a lot today, and if he blows up, it's DFS, it can happen, but I'm really trusting Snell, and I'll probably be heavily with the field and maybe even above it, even though he is going to be a top-owned guy everywhere. Walker Buehler versus the Mets should also be a popular option today with 3.1 implied runs against him. He's going to be right behind Blake Snell and SP2 sites in terms of ownership, and Buehler's strikeout stuff is nowhere near Snell's with an 8.5 K per 9 and 10.4% swing strike rate, but the Mets' 26.4% aggregate K rate in their projected lineup should help him out a bit. Based on our ownership projections, both Snell and Buehler should be owned comparably, and I'd much prefer Snell. I think Buehler is a little bit cheaper. I get why you might want to go there, but the upside isn't even close, so I'd rather find the money to get to Snell and rather go a little bit cheaper than Buehler for a guy who maybe has comparable upside. Perhaps this paints a picture of the pitching on today's slate. Ronaldo Lopez going against Kansas City should also be a top-owned option today. He gets 4.3 implied runs against him, and he's had significant ownership expected on SP2 sites, with Lopez showing a decent 8.6 K per 9 at his price range. The SP2 situation, again, looks really dire today, but Lopez feels to me more like a guy to leverage against, given that he's got a 5.2% home run rate. He's also at a top home run park at guaranteed rate field. Guys like Adalberto Mondesi, Alex Gordon, Hunter Dozier, Jorge Soler, and Ryan O'Hearn are all over a 3.3% home run rate versus right-hand pitching. Lopez is not a guy I love. He's especially a guy I don't love at high ownership, so I'm more inclined to get away from him. But again, he's going to be a top-owned guy, and there's usually a reason why that happens and why a pitcher becomes chalk. I think a decent Vegas total and decent strikeout numbers would probably be the main reasons why Lopez is going to get that ownership today. Now on to our next corner, the top stacks, and Arizona's stack going against Jeff Hoffman is going to be one of those teams. They get 5.5 implied runs in their favor, and Hoffman's allowed 13.5 hits per 9 going back to last season. He also allows a 4.5% home run rate and a 7.9% swing strike rate in 2019. Arizona's not a perfect hitting team, but Hoffman has shown precious little of value going against a team with enough hitters like Eduardo Escobar, Adam Jones, Christian Walker, Blake Swihart, and Ketel Marte, who can punish him for not missing bats. It's also in Colorado. Obviously, that's going to help out quite a bit as well. Arizona's a team I like more, actually more as a full stack than the Colorado side. A Philly stack versus Genesis Cabrera could also be interesting today with 5.7 implied runs in their favor, which is a slate high. It's Cabrera's first start in the majors. He's going against the Philly team as a 188 ISO and a 20.4% K rate versus left-hand pitching. The weather is currently a major concern there, but a high team total versus a first-time starter is a worthwhile place to target Philly, with only Cesar Hernandez appreciably under league average in home runs versus left-hand pitching. Philly at home is a stack I often like because they do have some power and also enough hitters who can do damage, so I think Philly's in a good spot here, but again, watch the weather closely. But the spot here versus Cabrera, a first-time pitcher who has a really good curveball but doesn't seem to have a lot else of note in terms of his production in the minor leagues, it does seem like a spot here where Philly can do production as long as the game does go off. And an Atlanta stack going against Anibal Sanchez is also interesting with 5.6 implied runs for them. Sanchez is down to a 1.7 whip and 9.8 hits per 9 allowed from a 1.2 whip and 7.6 hits per 9 allowed going back to last season. There's power at pretty much every spot of the projected lineup for Atlanta besides Nick Markakis going against right-hand pitching, and the entire stack isn't expected to be owned as much as mini stacks and one-offs, so there could be some leverage there by going to Atlanta. Again, a high team total here, a good hitting park, also a good hitting situation with the weather heating up in Atlanta. Going against Sanchez has been an easy spot so far this year. Not a ton of home run production, but a lot of hits going around, so I don't mind going to Atlanta. I think it's this full stack. They're going to be a little bit underappreciated today. And now onto the lower owned options on today's slate. The Baltimore stack going against Ryan Carpenter, one of those teams that I like a lot. They get 5.3 implied runs in their favor, and Carpenter's been brutal going back to last year with a 7.6% home run rate and just 6.7 Ks per 9. It's another weather risk game, but it's one where it's worth the exposure if it does go for the top 5 of Baltimore, especially Renato Nunez, who smashed left-hand pitching with a 214 ISO and a 6.3% home run rate. Carpenter's a guy who's shown very little. Baltimore, a team who's not great, but they can get run production together, especially at home, so I like the spot for Baltimore. But again, watch the weather closely. That's a very important consideration to have today. And Kevin Gausman versus Washington is also a bit interesting today with 4.4 implied runs against him, which isn't great. And the Washington lineup is better than their season numbers versus right-hand pitching due to all their injuries, but there is still a 23.9% aggregate K rate in the projected lineup. And I think Gausman's also done a good job limiting home runs with a 2.2% rate, and his 9.3 Ks per 9 can be valuable on a slate with some really questionable pitching projected to be getting more ownership. Gausman's a guy who I like the talent of. The price also works, so Gausman is someone I'll have ownership of, though that Vegas total really does worry me, as does being in a positive hitting park. But again, would you rather have him or Ronaldo Lopez? I think I'd rather have Gausman personally. The White Sox stack versus Glenn Sparkman's also interesting with 4.7 implied runs in their favor. Sparkman's been good at inducing ground balls with just a 29% fly ball rate, and his 1.9% home run rate as well is also a good sign of that. But he's in a positive hitting park and he could yield some production here. Sparkman's inability to strike guys out with just 6.2 Ks per 9 bodes well for the White Sox, given that they normally strike out at a 26.8% K rate versus right-hand pitching. They also have enough power to take advantage of a guy who can't miss bats. So even though Sparkman does keep the ball down, I think there are enough factors here in terms of the hitting park, also the White Sox lineup who can do some damage if they don't strike out. I think it's a good spot here to go against Sparkman, a guy who maybe people will avoid because, again, just not giving up a ton of home runs, not giving up a lot of fly balls in general. Pablo Lopez versus San Francisco is also an option I'll consider today with 3.5 implied runs against him. Lopez is still going to be decently owned with over 20% expected for him, but he's lower than the other SP2s on the slate, so I think he qualifies for the criteria of the slide. Lopez's price is solid, and his 8.7 Ks per 9 could provide enough value against San Francisco with a 24% K rate versus right-hand pitching. And Brandon Belt's really the only guy with legit power I'm concerned about versus a righty. Lopez, not a terribly impressive pitcher, but on a slate again where people are going to Ronaldo Lopez, I'd rather go to a guy like Pablo Lopez and hope that he can do better versus a team who's worse overall. And on to our last corner, the one-offs, and Nolan Arenado going against Robbie Ray is one of the high-priced one-offs that I like today. A full stack versus Ray feels risky given his elite strikeout ability, but Arenado's got a 371 batting average, a 401 ISO, a 200 WRC plus, and an 8.1% home run rate versus left-hand pitching going back to last year. And that gives him the best chance of producing runs versus Ray, with Ray slightly worse versus righties with a 4.4 xFIP and a 3.3% home run rate. I don't want to pay for the full Colorado Rocky stack because I don't know that I see the production for everybody. I think Arenado, and to a slightly lesser extent Trevor Story, those are guys I like a lot more going against Ray, a guy who can give up that production, the righty hitting. And Nick Castellanos versus John Means is also a one-off I like a lot. The full Detroit stack is appealing if not for the weather concerns, but Castellanos in particular is elite versus left-hand pitching with a 373 batting average and a 170 WRC plus, while Means does struggle versus righties with 6.2 Ks per 9 and a 4.3% home run rate compared to 10.4 Ks per 9 and a 1.8% home run rate versus lefties. Again, it's a home run hitting park there in Baltimore. Detroit is a team who is interesting as a stack, but the weather kind of put me off of them, and I don't want to mention another weather concerned team overall. But Castellanos is a one-off, is a guy I like the most out of that stack, so he'd be the one I would really want to make sure I have for Detroit today. And Ji-Man Choi going against Trent Thornton is a cheaper one-off that I like today. Thornton can strike out either side of the plate, but a 5.2 xFIP and a 5.6% home run rate allowed to lefties can allow production, while Choi is the cheapest lefty on Tampa Bay, who also has a 3.9% home run rate and a 135 WRC plus versus right-hand pitching. Guys like Brandon Lau and Austin Meadows are a little bit better at versus right-hand pitching overall, but those guys are expensive. Ji-Man Choi is not, so I think that's logic going to him as a one-off in the hopes that he can find some production versus a guy in Trent Thornton, who again does have really solid strikeout stuff, but also gives up some decent contact. So there are my thoughts on today's slate. So like this video and comment your double dong pick today down below. If you are correct, I'll give you that special shout out in tomorrow's video. So please like the video right now, and really for yourself, keep a close eye on the weather today because a lot of these games are important ones to have if they are going to play, but also some decent weather risks for a few of those games I mentioned. So keep your eyes peeled there. And right now, let's all support the weather and keep it all up in the clouds by liking this video and commenting your double dong pick down below. And use that promo code SWITCHANDHEDGE for half off your first month of any Osmo.com package. All the ownership projections, the rankings, the top stack tool where Osmo ranks the top stacks based upon their likelihood of being the best value or the best performing stack. Lots of things are going to help you make better lineups every day. Also, lineup builder, a lot of different things that'll make you better at MLB DFS. So use that promo code SWITCHANDHEDGE right now to get half off your first month. And I'll be back later today on Live Before Locks. Subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when we go live. And I'll be back tomorrow as well with another Four Corners video. So enjoy the day and good luck.